No, it's not a car dealership. It's the parking lot of OCFS, the New York State Office of Children and Family Services in Rensselaer. You're looking at 37 brand new 2012 Ford Fusion hybrids, just under 30 grand apiece. 37 vehicles totaling about $1.1 million.
I think it's another disappointment and a growing list of disappointments that we've had with the Office of Children and Family Services.
State Senator Michael Nozzolio has been a vocal critic of OCFS and the levels of safety it provides to its workers in juvenile detention facilities. We showed him our findings on the car purchases.
The cars are not a high priority. They should be a lower priority, particularly for an agency like this where you are dealing with individuals in their institutional settings.
In vehicle records for 2011 obtained from OCFS through a Freedom of Information Law filing, we found the agency listed 385 vehicles, a number that has since been reduced to 345. And those records indicate that some of those taxpayer-funded cars have been assigned to the offices of high-level OCFS administrators. Most of them are at the central office here in the Capital Region, which already has a fleet of pool vehicles. Still, individual cars have been assigned to the office of two associate commissioners. One has a Ford Escape, another a Toyota Highlander. The office of an acting deputy commissioner also has a Highlander. The IT deputy commissioner's office has a Honda Civic Hybrid. The office of the agency accreditation manager has a Grand Caravan. The office of the chief psychiatrist a Chevy Uplander. And the office of the upstate area manager a Chevy HHR.
Morale is at an all-time low. Assaults of staff are at an all-time high. And then here we have an agency that seems to be more focused with the transportation of their administrators than the safety and protection of their frontline staff.
The Highlanders, Uplander, and HHR are all sport utility vehicles, and here's what the state vehicle policy says about SUVs. These vehicles should only be purchased under unique circumstances when smaller, more fuel-efficient vehicles will not suffice, such as driving on rough terrain, transporting extraordinary equipment, etc. OCFS says the SUV purchases have all been approved by the Office of General Services. I'm Greg Floyd for the CW15 News at 10. I've been telling you about state vehicles for months, and now today I've learned that Governor Cuomo is ready to take action to cut the state vehicle fleet, which numbers in the tens of thousands. A memo from the second floor of the state capitol has gone out to all state agencies telling them to cut cars and cut them now. We keep following this because you paid for it.
There's no final cut that's in this particular memo. So again, we're just reviewing what the status is right now. The governor talked about in the executive budget getting control of fleet management. Right now, state agencies make their own decisions about the kinds of fleets that they need. We want to consolidate that. As part of that process, we're reviewing the entire state fleet.
We have found brand new state cars everywhere. Here's a parking lot full of 2009 Chevy Malibus purchased by the New York State Police. I found them last year, just sitting there untouched for 2 years, covered by weeds the size of small trees. The factory plastic coverings still on their seats. I found them at a retirement party for a state prison superintendent in suburban Buffalo. State cars at that party that clearly say for official use only. Should state cars be at a retirement party?
This is a retirement party. I'll talk to you another time.
When will you talk to us, Commissioner? If you just tell me when you want to set up something now, or?
No.
I've told you that each superintendent at each one of the state's 67 prisons has their own personal state car, including some brand new Chevy Equinoxes. The state inspector general is still investigating that and the widespread use of state vehicles throughout the Department of Corrections. And it's not just state agencies. In the state assembly at last check, 19 senior lawmakers from both parties have state vehicles. Last year I told you that taxpayers purchased a brand new 2011 Ford Taurus for Speaker Sheldon Silver and a nearly $40,000 GMC Acadia for Minority Leader Brian Kolb. In these tight budget times, why did you decide to spend nearly $40,000 on your car?
Well, first of all, I didn't decide to do anything. The vehicle broke down and it had to be replaced, and that has to be approved by the majority. So the vehicle had to be replaced, and it's not about not being concerned about taxpayer dollars, because obviously I am, and obviously I have a track record, and it just had to be replaced.
With so much of our world about perception, did you ever think that maybe I shouldn't get this car?
I can't walk across New York State.
Tonight at 11, we look at one agency which recently bought dozens of new cars. We'll show you a parking lot full of them, and we'll show you the records we obtained from that agency showing that quite a few high-end cars are assigned to high-ranking associate and deputy commissioners. At the state capitol, there is paper everywhere in dumpster after dumpster after dumpster. It's piled up on the 212 desks of lawmakers in the Senate and Assembly. It's piled up under their desks. It's piled up high and far on the shelves of not one, but 4 document rooms, 2 in the Capitol, 2 in the LOB. No one is quite sure exactly how much all this paper costs, but here are some numbers run by NYPIRG. In the last 12-month period available, NYPIRG found roughly $8 million worth of capital expenses related to paper. The Assembly Print Shop, $2.2 million. Senate Production Services, $4.2 million. Most of their non-personnel costs were for items like paper and paper cutters. The document rooms, $1.2 million. Another $554,000 on miscellaneous purchases described as paper and copies and related items. Assemblymember Jim Tedisco is leading the fight against the mountains of paper. He wants to go digital. Computers, iPads, Kindles. Here are shots of him on the floor arguing his case with plenty of props. Does it astound you the amount of paper that's printed each and every day here in this building?
Oh, it's incredible. You walk out of this assembly chambers, at the end of the day, you'll see huge buckets filled up to the brim with papers, which are going to go to landfills.
So who's using all that paper? We spent a day while the legislature was in session, January 10th, going from document room to document room. 10 a.m., absolutely no action at each of the 4 rooms. 11 o'clock, more of the same. Nary a document touched. Noon, same thing. 1 o'clock, ditto. Hour after hour while we were there, no one asked for copies of the bills piled up to the ceiling. We did see a few people take the daily calendar that is left out on the counter. Can you get by with using less paper in this building?
You can. It just has to be an attitude and a state of mind.
Can the legislature get by with using less paper?
Well, I think that we can become more digital, yes, but I do think that you always need that hard copy, and that, I also have to say that I represent some paper companies, International Paper, Finch, Georgia Pacific is in my district. So I guess I look at it on the other side.
Even though she likes paper, Senator Betty Little makes use of an iPad for some of her official business, and that's something that is catching on elsewhere. Check out this Waterville Elite City Council meeting, not a piece of paper in sight. The council, mayor, staffers, and agency heads all have iPads.
The biggest impact is here at the council meeting. We used to have to make copies of all the legislation, which could be multiple pages, to all the staff, and that's gone away.
Every meeting we have now, everyone has an iPad in front of them. Your calendar's on there, your tasks are on there, your legislation is on there.
Back at the Capitol, it will take a constitutional amendment to get the paper off lawmakers' desks. The state constitution actually says all bills must sit on those desks for 3 days. The amendment has to be passed by 2 separate legislatures, and then it goes to the voters.
I'm pretty sure the voters, in this year when we have billions of dollars in deficits, are going to want to say, quit wasting our taxpayers' dollars on printing paper and waste and impacting our environment. Go into the 21st century and go digital.
Greg Floyd for the CW15 News at 10. State lawmakers were back in Albany this week. The out-of-town lawmakers back to collecting $165 a day of taxpayer money for meals and lodging. But as I've told you before, some are collecting those Albany per diems on days they are clearly marked as being absent. The leader in that regard, William Boyland of Brooklyn. He went so far as to put in for a per diem on a day last year when he was in court in New York to answer to corruption charges. He was acquitted of those charges, but is now facing new bribery counts. And this week, he also faced our camera for the first time because when it comes to all of this, you paid for it. He missed the first official day of session in Albany last week because he was in court in New York City answering to new corruption charges. He missed a lot of work in Albany last year, absent 20 days, and as we have documented for you through records obtained via the Freedom of Information law, on many of those days he put in for per diems, $165 a day for meals and lodging. Actually, for 14 of those days that he wasn't here, he signed legal documents saying he was here and pocketed your money. This week he was back in Albany, and I was able to talk to him about it, although he didn't have too much to say. I've got you absent 20 days last year. 14 of those days you put in for per diems here in Albany. How do you How do you reconcile that fact?
Well, I saw your report, not really sure. I'll be glad to talk to you once we take a look at everything.
And no matter how I asked, I got pretty much the same answer.
I've got numbers right here, day after day, May 9th, May 11th. Pick a day.
Back in May, you said?
Yeah, of this past year.
Once I get an opportunity to really take a look at everything, I'll be sure to give you a ring and we'll sit down and talk about it.
The Assembly requires little or no documentation when it comes to submitting these per diems, and I had the chance to ask Assembly Speaker Sheldon Silver if it's time to change that.
We have guidelines. We require certification, under penalties of perjury. People make statements that they are here.
But if members are putting in for per diems here in Albany on days when they are clearly not here in Albany, the system's not working then.
It's clearly fraudulent. They should be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law.
So are you saying that Mr. Boylan, for instance, who's been absent 20 days, 14 of those days he's put in for per diems, he should be prosecuted, and you would back that?
I do not know the facts as to that particular incident. But I do say anybody who makes a false statement, who is not here when they assert that they are here, should be prosecuted.
I'll drop those statements off for you.
Statements that we are still waiting for Boylan to review.
Any idea, though, how this could have happened all these days that, just off the top of your head?
I don't have a clue as to what you are speaking to.
I've also discovered that Boylan put in for per diems on days that, according to an affidavit filed in U.S. District Court, he was talking to federal agents downstate about taking bribes. I've turned over the documentation showing Boylan's per diem discrepancies to Speaker Silver's office, and we've done the same with the Albany County DA's office.